Toronto Maple Leafs new head coach Craig Berube faced the Toronto media today to talk about how he's going to impact this Toronto Maple Leafs team as head coach. Also, GM Brad Treliving talks about what is left to do for this upcoming offseason and what the next step is, and I'm going to break it all down for you coming up on this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But before we get into it, we gotta say that 85% of you guys watching these videos aren't subscribed to the channel, so if you're trying to keep up to date on everything that's happening around the hockey world, including the Leafs, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. But with that said, let's jump right into the first topic of the video today, which is Berube faces Toronto media for the first time. And yes, this afternoon at around 12 Eastern Time, the new head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Craig Berube, was finally announced as the head coach and faced the media with front office staff, including Brendan Shanahan, Brad Treliving, and of course himself. And he made some great statements here that I think a lot of you Toronto Maple Leafs fans are going to be happy to see. The first one he said here, he said, obviously, you look at the roster first and foremost, there's some great players here. He said it's a great opportunity to build a team that can move forward and become something. Not better, but get over the hump a little bit here. And obviously hearing that from a new head coach is great to hear, because obviously what's been missing from the Toronto Maple Leafs the last little while is getting over that hump come playoff time. So to hear that he knows the star-studded talent that this Toronto Maple Leafs team has, and he's going to work with that to make this team not better, but finally get over that hump, because this team's already good. Obviously, getting better is the main goal here, but getting over that hump come playoff time is what Toronto Maple Leafs fans care about. They don't care if they win the President's Trophy. I mean, obviously, it's great to have, but, I mean, if you're not getting out of the first, second round of the playoffs, it doesn't mean nothing at the end of the season, really. So it's great to hear that, you know, he knows the talent he has here, and he's excited to work with the players they have to move forward here in Toronto and try to get that long-awaited Stanley Cup back in the Toronto Maple Leafs' hands. And he also said here, you know, watching the playoffs this year, I thought that there was already that kind of change going on with how they want to be built and play. And he said that's what GM Brad Treliving is bringing in. He said, also said, talking with Brad and Shanahan, we're on the same page. So obviously, it's great to hear that, you know, Brad and Shanahan and Berube are all on the same page. They all want the same end result, obviously. But seeing, you know, him saying that he sees, you know, watching this postseason that Toronto was in, watching the season that Toronto had, he knows what type of style that Brad Treliving wants this team to play. So him knowing that and him being willing to work with them on that and implementing his own style on this team is really going to help out, because obviously we know Brad Treliving loves that, you know, physical side of the game alongside with the, you know, the star-studded talent. You have the Austin Matthews, you have the William Nylander, you have the Mitch Marner type of guys, the guys who are going to get points for you night in and night out. But what Brad has done this offseason was, or last offseason, was bring in these, you know, physical guys that, yes, can still contribute offensively, like Bertuzzi and Domi, but can also get it done on the defensive end and on the physical side as well. And with the defense, obviously, we've seen those big body defenseman types brought in over the season and throughout last offseason. And this is what style that Berube has seen, you know, it change in Toronto, and he's willing to work with this. And I think that this style of play of a team is really going to work under Craig Berube, because that's kind of what he had in St. Louis. So it's great to see that him and Brad are on the same page when it comes to what players they want to bring in, what players they want to keep. That's great to hear if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. But also, you know, Craig Berube, when asked about, you know, the lack of playoff success, he said that stuff's in the past. He said, I'm focused on now and the future. And he says obviously he's going to bring his own style to this team and how, he wants this team to play the game. And he says, Brad and Brendan are on board with that, which is great to hear. He says, competitive, we don't want to get outworked ever. He said, we want to be highly competitive every night. And he said, we want to play a North game. We want to play fast. We want to be a heavy team. So this is honestly great to hear, in my opinion. I know I've said that a lot in this video, but he came out and said a lot of great things in this press conference. And obviously he said he wants to be highly competitive every night. He wants to bring that, fast-paced, heavy-hitting style to this team, which I think a lot of, a lot more Noah Gregor type players are going to be enforced here, which I love that because I love these fast guys. Also guys who like a Ryan Reeves, like a Tyler Bertuzzi, who are not afraid to get into the mix and mix it up with opponents and not afraid to try to get under their skin, lay the body and stuff like this night in and night out. So having that combination of speed and physicality is really what works in the playoffs. I mean, we've seen it, in recent seasons. Obviously, Boston's kind of been that team when they won that were fast. They had those guys that could also lay you out as well. So I think that this is what they may try to implement here in Toronto, which is honestly great to hear. And to hear that he doesn't want to get outworked ever is a big statement to make because, we've seen this in the past in Toronto where, they may have been outworked. They may have been outcoached on a given game in a given playoff series. So hearing Berube say, that he never wants to get outworked is massive. I mean, he's going to change on the fly. He's going to change between games and stuff like this. I'm assuming a big lineup change is going to happen as well. That will contribute all to him never wanting to get outworked. And this is the best thing that Berube said in this press conference today that I think a lot of you Toronto Maple Leafs fans could keep close to the vest here because, like I've said, we've seen this in the past where Toronto has been outworked and stuff like this. And to hear that they never want to get outworked just shows how dedicated he is going to be to this team and how dedicated he is going to be to this final end goal of, winning that Stanley Cup. So, hearing that he's not by basically saying he's willing to work on the fly and willing to, work in game to fix these things that will never make them get outworked is honestly huge in my opinion. But we did get some quotes from GM Brad Treliving here, which are really fun to hear, and that is Treliving speaks on what the next step is. First, he did comment on the new signing of head coach Craig Berube. He says, if you talk to any of the players that have played for him, they talked about how they would go through a wall for him. He also said the connection that he had with players, the accountability that he had with the players, the bond that he was able to build with staff. Ultimately, character matters. And this is awesome because, Craig Berube, yes, he is going to be a little bit hard-nosed. He is going to hold players accountable when maybe they're having an off night or maybe they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, which is great. But on the other end, you have him, building that connection with players, building that connection with staff that, these players want to win for him because he's, such a great person to them, such a great coach to them, a great mentor to some of these guys. And I think it's just great to hear that, Brad say, talking to players that play for him, saying that they will go through a wall for him, just speaks volumes of his character and how, that St. Louis Blues team eventually, came back under 500 record to win the Stanley Cup. And that's not just because he's a great coach, because he is. It's because the players wanted to do this for him. He said, in one quote, he said, I believe in you, and, and you can't stop believing. And that's ultimately why they came back and won that Stanley Cup. So hearing that the players are this, connected to him in the sense that they want to win for Berube is going to be huge here in Toronto. I think having that connection between a coach and between the players is huge. It creates so much. I mean, we've seen what happened with Vancouver when Bruce Boudreau got fired. I mean, the players were upset because they loved Bruce. They loved playing for him. So if the Toronto Maple Leafs players can love playing for Berube, it's only going to transition to excellent play on the ice. But
the big thing that Brad announced today was what they're going to do this offseason. And if we take a look here, he said, I said at the end of the year, we're going to look at everything. We've got some really good players, and we don't want to lose sight of that. But he also says now Craig and I will sit down and we will start to dig into all the other areas, roster construction, all those types of things. We've got a busy summer ahead. So hearing this means there are big changes coming in the ranks of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Hearing that they're going to look at everything, they're going to look at the roster construction, and saying that he has a busy summer ahead means obviously he's going to do something this offseason. We've seen it last year when he brought in, Bertuzzi and Domi. I keep going back to these guys because they were such good players for this Toronto Maple Leafs team, and I think this is exactly what he's going to try to do. Again, obviously he has players to re-sign. He has, Bertuzzi, Domi, if they do decide to re-sign those guys. They also have free agency coming up. They have the draft coming up. They have a lot of stuff coming up within these next couple of months once the Stanley Cup playoffs are over that is going to really shape the foundation for this new Toronto Maple Leafs team with a new coach behind the bench. Whether it's moving Marner out and bringing in somebody else, whether it's, keeping the core four intact but bringing in some other, great role players that are going to help these guys out throughout this season. I think it's going to be big. Obviously, Berube, we seen earlier in this video say, he knows the style of play that Brad wants, and he's completely on board with that. So having two great minds like Treliving and Berube sitting down and trying to plan out how they want this roster to look like next year is going to be big, because we're not going to see the same Toronto Maple Leafs team as we've seen on the ice this year. It's going to be completely different, because I think as a GM, this is Brad Treliving's year to do what he wants with this team. Obviously, he came in last offseason, didn't really have the time to, do what he wanted. This season, he finally got to sit down, watch this team for a full season, for a full playoff series, and now he knows what adjustments he needs to make this team a Stanley Cup contending team. So I'm really excited to see what these two minds are going to come up with and what changes are going to come in Toronto. I think there's going to be a lot of big news surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs in the coming months, and I'm really excited for it, and I know you guys are too. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on all of this stuff, the Berube comments, the Treliving comments. Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys. But we're going to get into everybody's favorite topic here on the channel, which is comment of the day. And the comment of the day today goes to Curtis. Curtis says, good work, Casey. Have a good long weekend. And here we are at the end of another long weekend. And doesn't it go by fast, Curtis? Really appreciate giving me your thoughts here, having a great long weekend. I hope all you guys had a great May 2-4 if you're in Canada, a great long weekend. I had a couple rounds of golf, and I'm not going to lie, I loved it. I enjoyed my weekend. I know you guys did too. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road for 3,500 subscribers, and we're almost there. So if you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to keep up to date on everything that's happening around the hockey world, make sure down below and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to check out a video that I did the other day talking about Craig Berube and talking about Matvei Michkov coming over to the NHL, it'll be popping up on your screen right now. But as always, I've been your host, KC. Keep your stick on the ice.